Hello. So this evening, while I'm having my tea, and this is not something I continue to focus on, but since I came across this news earlier in the day, I just wanted to look at the results that come up when doing a very simple search. Israel COVID-19. That's it. Nothing else. And I'm just going to go through the best matches at present. Um, and some of it is chronological, others are not. So I'll just go through the results. Israel sticks with fourth vaccine shot, sees Omicron wave waning in a week. All right. Israel predicts Omicron will wane in a week with fourth vaccine dose. That's NDTV. That's an Indian news source. This is from Arutz Shiva. I have no idea about this source. Israel to distribute 25 to 30 million free antigen tests. All right. Fourth COVID-19 vaccine shows limited results against Omicron, finds Israel study. Israel cuts mandatory COVID-19 isolation to 5 days. Bonus Bio Group submits outstanding phase 2 trial results for Mesencure, a treatment for severe COVID-19, to the Israeli Ministry of Health. Never heard of Mesencure. Severe COVID-19. Indonesian officials make a rare visit to Israel to discuss COVID-19 strategies. Yeah, right. That's the place to get your advice from. COVID-19. Israel says Omicron wave has not yet reached peak. And this is 3 hours ago. From the Jerusalem Post blogs. Seems like there is Jewish media intent on keeping the pandemic alive and keeping the vaccination drive alive. I haven't read the story, but just looking at the headline, that is the impression I get. Wall Street Journal 3 hours ago. Once a global COVID-19 vaccine leader, Israel struggles to get its kids inoculated. Israel cuts COVID-19 isolation to 5 days. COVID-19 fourth dose of vaccine not good enough against Omicron variant, reveals Israeli study. Coronavirus Digest, fourth booster not enough to fight Omicron, study shows. News Channel Nebraska. Omicron might mark the end of COVID-19's pandemic phase unless a certain scenario happens, Fauci says. Unless a certain scenario happens. I get the impression that scenario is happening right now with full intent of the Israeli government. Israel's unemployment rate drops to 6th lowest since plagued by COVID-19. Israel cuts COVID-19 isolation to 5 days. Which news should I open and look at? Well, let's look at, to be fair, let's look at news coming from inside of Israel. Here. COVID-19, Israel says Omicron wave has not yet reached peak. Health Ministry D-G said the decision to shorten quarantine for infected people was made to find a balance between medical and social needs. That sounds just like the FDA and the CDC. How is this any different? This is Israel's coronavirus czar, Professor Nachman Ash, seen during a visit at the Jerusalem municipality on November the 22nd, 2020. They have a coronavirus czar. Wow, nice mask there, Mr. Czar. Israel has yet to reach the peak of the Omicron wave. Health Ministry Director General Professor Nachman Ash said Tuesday, as Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, Health Minister Nitzan Horowitz, and Finance Minister Avigdor Lieberman announced that over 25 million at-home antigen tests would be distributed for free to Israelis. I believe that the peak of the wave will occur in another week or so, Ash said in an interview to FM 103 radio. Ash noted that the lower number of official verified cases that Israel had seen at the end of the previous week, less than 40,000 as opposed to almost in previous days 50,000, might not necessarily mean that there is an actual decrease in infections, adding that the phenomenon could have caused by fewer people undergoing official tests and reporting that they are positive. So they are intent on keeping the numbers up. That's why the free tests. However, we're also seeing that the number of hospitalizations is still rising, but the increase is slowing down, he said. As of Tuesday, the Health Ministry had not released new complete data on the pandemic trends in Israel since Sunday night. And I could read more, but this sounds like, you know what this reminds me of? These are the things, exactly the things that I find those of the Jewish community in America complaining about. We don't have the data. Why are there so many tests? And tests are themselves designed to pick up very minute levels of the virus, and therefore the numbers will go up. Concentrate on hospitalizations, or in fact, not just hospitalizations, but the number of people who die from COVID-19. And the very things that they're criticizing the US health system about, or in other countries in Europe, these are the exact same things happening about Israel. But I never hear them, or rarely do I hear them mention the things that are happening in the motherland. And why is that? Why is that? Okay, let's look at another source, which I have reason to believe doesn't have anything pro or anti-Israel. So here's the Hindustan Times on MSN.com, Coronavirus Digest. Fourth booster not enough to fight Omicron, study shows. Now, this could be that they took this news. Well, it says there, Deutsche Welle, Delhi. Deutsche Welle is from Germany. Not to say that because it's from Germany, so it's pro or anti-Israel, or it's going to be anti-Israel. They might have just taken the report from the statistics gathered in Israel, or their study there. And I don't think along those lines that a news source from a certain country is pro or anti another country. Can happen. It does happen. But I'm not of the mindset that that's necessarily the case. Unless I look at that news source over a period of time and I detect that pattern, then I could say, okay, fine, this news source is always pro-China, or it's always pro-India, or it's always anti-Germany, or anti-France. Then I could get an idea that, okay, this news source is like that. Here, let's look at News Channel Nebraska. I have no idea. Never, ever have I seen this news source before. I just find the headline to be interesting. Omicron might mark the end of COVID-19's pandemic phase unless a certain scenario happens, Fauci says. And you know what? I've also noticed something, that a lot of people who directly or indirectly have an allegiance to the Jewish community or to Israel or both have an allergic reaction to the name Fauci. Maybe they think he's Italian and something reminds them of Europe, or I do not know the reasons why and how these things work. But I do notice things, and that's one thing I've noticed. Just like they got behind Novak Djokovic, and I actually did a search to check, is Novak Djokovic actually Jewish? Because he's finding a lot of support from the Jewish community. And they're praising him like he's a hero. Well, in some way, yeah, he stood for what he believes in. But the support he was getting, I was just curious. He's not Jewish, by the way. You can check that. And if I'm wrong, you can let me know. So, let's read this by Travis Caldwell and Holly Yan, CNN. And say something about the World Economic Forum. And this is News Channel Nebraska. I have no idea. It's still too early to predict whether Omicron's rapid spread will help push coronavirus from the pandemic phase to a more manageable endemic phase, but I would hope that that's the case, Dr. Anthony Fauci said Monday. And I would say I agree with Dr. Anthony Fauci. That is what my anticipation is also, given what I know about the Omicron variant. A disease that is endemic has a constant presence in a population but does not affect an alarmingly large number of people or disrupt society, as typically seen in a pandemic. Good, you told the difference. Since Omicron is highly transmissible but apparently less likely to cause a severe disease as some previous variants, it could mark a transition from this COVID-19 pandemic chapter to an endemic phase. I apologize for the stray dog barking outside. There's a restaurant nearby and they feed these dogs, and sometimes they are a little negligent about feeding this boy or some other one. So that could explain the dog barking. And I don't have a studio. This is at home. I'm just reading, and then I'll upload this to YouTube. Okay, let's continue reading. But that would only be the case if we don't get another variant that eludes the immune response to the prior variant. Fauci told the Davos Agenda, a virtual event this week held by the World Economic Forum. And already, you can think the higher possibility is there is going to be another variant. You'd be naive to think there won't be. And if this is the approach they've taken so far, then you can imagine what is the approach they're going to continue with. And since this news is a result in the context of Israel, and they are the most pro-vaccine country on this entire planet, you could expect variant coming from there, or any very pro-vaccine society. Not necessarily, it may not happen that way, but I'm just thinking that is a possibility. At least we know the approach could be that they try to develop a vaccine for every new variant. Seems like they have a supply of variants and they have a supply of vaccines, and that's the way they want it to be. Let's read under the subheading, Schools Grapple with the Omicron Surge. As cases and hospitalizations have spurred staffing shortages across the nation, some school districts, from Patterson, New Jersey to Mobile, Alabama, have moved to virtual learning this week. In Texas, all schools and offices in the Houston Independent School District will be closed Tuesday due to rising cases in the community. The school district announced on its website. Classes are expected to resume Wednesday. The school district encouraged students and staff to take this extra day to mitigate potential exposure. Wow, thank you for the extra day to mitigate potential exposure. How wise. Meantime, a mandate to wear masks in schools is under fire in Virginia. That is correct. I read about that. And this is how it continues to go on. I'm not going to read the whole thing. And I'm not going to close these windows. What I would do is I'll upload this video to YouTube. And once again, I'll put the links to these articles in the video description. And you could read the rest of the article, look at it more in depth. I'm just reading for myself. And I'll also post this to YouTube. It's already 19 minutes. That is about enough time I want to spend with this. But a picture has emerged. And I'll share what I have learned with you as soon as I upload this. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your attention, and goodbye.